So today we are going to conclude this chapter where we talked about the goods market of a small open economy, which is a more practical economy rather than a closed economy, which is just the uh, closer version of reality, but it's not actual reality. But small open economy, whether it's a small open economy or large open economy, both are the real economy. They are not hypothetical or something that is purely assumption based. So our last discussion will be on government policy and its relationship with current account. Now, many economists who many economists have believed in past and still they are having the same opinion about the relationship between government policy and its impact on current account. So when they describe the relationship between fiscal policy and current account, they say that when the government is spending more than its income, when the government is spending any amount additional than the government income, that is tax revenue, the government would be running a budget deficit. And when the government would be running a budget deficit, it if that deficit causes national savings to fall, because one of the component of overall national saving is government saving, you know that. So when government is spending more than its revenue, it means that government is either going to utilize the saving or the government is going to borrow. For now we are assuming that government is going to utilize the saving amount for spending more than the income. So when the government is running a budget deficit, it will lead to a decline in national savings. And when national savings in an open economy decreases, the decline in national saving will ultimately bring a decline in net lending or net exports. So it will ultimately reduces the current account deficit. So the economists are of the opinion that there's a phrase that they use to define such scenario, where they talk about the idea that how the government policy is leading to a current account deficit, how like how like government budget deficit leads to current account deficit is called twin deficit. Now this idea can be understood with the uh, causes the current account deficit. So this is the idea of the current account, the twin deficit. All right, so we are clear about it now. One thing you need to understand here, that all the economies, there are some cases, there are some economies having a chronic problem of budget deficit. Like every government is going to run a larger deficit than the previous one, maybe because of various reasons, right? So when the government is going to run a budget deficit because of various reasons, and a larger budget deficit means lower national savings, because government is going to consume all its savings to fulfill the deficit, and there would be lesser money available for paying off for the import. So it will lead to a current account deficit. And Pakistan economy and similar economies like Pakistan are also going through this twin deficit problem. Idea using a diagram, there's a relationship between fiscal policy, which is a policy relating to government spending and revenue, and the current account of an economy, open economy. Like how they are linking the two. They are saying that if budget deficit causes national savings to fall, then there would definitely be current account deficit in the economy. So budget deficit can only cause current account deficit if the national savings are affected. If the national savings are not affected by increase in budget deficit, then there would be no relationship between budget deficit and twin deficit. But in practical, economies generally face the problem of twin deficit. Like Pakistan economy is currently running a twin deficit problem. there's a current account deficit as well as there's a budget deficit, and every government has to run a larger budget deficit. There are several reasons for it. First reason is the when the economy is undocumented, which means that it's most of the businesses are not paying taxes. Similarly, most of these people are hiding their income so that they can avoid taxes. They cannot pay taxes. So there would always be a lower collection of tax revenue, but the government spending because of larger population is too higher, right? So it leads to a larger and larger budget deficit. So when there's a budget deficit, and on the other hand, economy has always got lower saving. Pakistan economy has always got lower savings to finance the investment. When there are lower saving, there would be lower investment in the country. So if you have lower savings and you are also having budget deficit, and third problem that our economy has got, it has got the problem of larger import over the years compared to export. So to pay for those import, you need to either to have savings or to have dollars. So every time you have to borrow larger amounts of money to pay for those additional imports. So it means that we are in a very similar scenario, which is known as the twin deficit, where every time when the government runs a budget deficit, it has always brought an increase in the current account deficit. So it's something that is real. All right. So once we are clear about the idea of the twin deficit, now we can write down the relationship between government policy and so what we said is, when the government is spending more than its revenue, which means government is running an expansionary fiscal policy. What does that mean? Expansionary fiscal policy means when the government is spending money so that people would get income, uh, businesses will also get some money, they would get needed things. So government is basically injecting money into the system. So when the government is spending more than its revenue, the government is trying to spend more on hospitals, government is trying to provide income in the form of salary raise, government is also trying to build motorways, government is trying to build hospitals, government is trying to build uh, larger military power by spending more on various military equipment. So all these spendings are counted. All these spending will stimulate economy. Like it would provide a kind of expansion to the output production. So that is why when the government is spending more than its revenue, it would lead to a kind of budget deficit by some amount, and that budget deficit would cause national savings to fall. And when national savings are going to fall, there would be a current account deficit. Current account deficit increases, or you can say that current account surplus would fall. So this is how a larger budget deficit leads to a current account deficit. This is the idea of twin deficit. Now we can represent this idea using a diagram, using the same saving investment curve that we have been discussing from in the chapter, from the beginning of the chapter. So let's try to show it up. In a small open economy, we have world real interest rate and desired savings and investment on horizontal axis. We have desired investment, we have desired savings, and the world real interest rate is somewhere. The world real interest rate is somewhere here. Now you can see that the gap between A and B is the initial current account surplus. Now this is CAS. This is the amount of savings, which you can say that 6 billion, and this is the amount of investment at a world real interest rate of RW. So you can calculate the net lending by subtracting the saving minus investment. So 6 minus 1 is a 5. 5 is net lending, right? So initially the distance AB is equal to the current account surplus. Now you need to apply this idea. Now you need to see if the same small open economy is experiencing that the government is spending more than its revenue. So the government will be running a budget deficit, and that budget deficit will cause national savings to fall. And you know that when national savings are going to fall, this desired saving curve would shift backward. So saving curve would shift backward in this way. Saving curve would shift backward, and so saving curve would shift backward in this way. So you may call it ST2. Now the saving curve has shifted backward, and the new equilibrium would be here, where because the world real interest rate is fixed for the small open economy. So this is the amount of current account surplus now. So you can see now uh, after the government spending, which ultimately creates a deficit, budget deficit. So the national saving has declined from 6 billion to, let's say, 2 billion. Now this small open economy can only lend 1 billion. So earlier it was able to lend 5 billion. So it means that budget deficit has ultimately resulted in a decline in current account surplus or resulted in current account deficit. That is what economists are trying to show, that how a fiscal policy that is expansionary in nature, that is going to bring various development into the country, may ultimately bring a current account deficit. Because you know that when the government is spending more money, ultimately it will increase the aggregate demand in the economy, because you know from the chapter that an increased government spending is a part of aggregate demand. A larger government spending will ultimately raise the aggregate demand. But you can see that if the government spending is more than its revenue, it would lead to a current account, it would lead to a budget deficit. That budget deficit, if reduces the national saving, it would lead to a current account deficit that is being represented here. Uh, so this is the idea that you need to keep in mind. Are we good to go? All right. So, all right. So, the new chapter that we are going to begin with is the chapter 7 in the book, and the title of the chapter is Asset Market, Money and Prices. Now, before I go for defining the outline of the chapter, you just need to reflect on the title of the chapter. It emphasizes on the asset market. Uh, so, so asset market is a market comprised of various real and financial asset. Real asset means houses, gold, and let's say financial asset like bonds, stocks, share, bank accounts. So all these are various assets. So in the previous chapter, we talked about the goods market model of a small open economy and a large open economy. And in the labor, in the productivity output and employment chapter, we we discussed the idea of labor market, where we determined the overall national level of employment through a labor market model. Here in this chapter, we will be talking about a third market model, which is important one. Like all three models are important: the goods market model, the labor market model, and the asset market model. Now, one of the asset that economists believe is essential when we talk about asset market is money. So they just have a different idea than the understanding of common people about the money, because common people believe that money is something money is something means more income or more wealth. So economists have a different opinion about it. They believe that money is something that is widely used and accepted as a mode of payment, and it is one of the essential assets into the set of asset markets. So that is why we have discussion on one of the essential asset, that is money. And you also know that uh, in every economy, the prices of the goods and services, the prices of their assets, the debt they have taken from their own government or from any other source, all these are represented in the form of money. So basically money is something that is a that is used as a yardstick or as a measure that assigns economic value to different products. So that is why, because all prices are listed in terms of units of money, so a larger money supply in the country means having larger prices of goods and services into various markets. That is why there's a relationship between money and prices, and we are going to talk about this in our chapter. So the chapter outline for of this is going to start from defining the idea of money. What do we mean by money? So we'll be talking about it in the first place. Next to this, we have portfolio allocation and demand for asset. Portfolio allocation means when you are understanding the choices of a wealth holder, you would be observing that how he divides his wealth among various set of assets available to him, and why he, among the various assets, why he prefers to hold money. So the understanding of how an individual having some wealth in his account is going to distribute his wealth into various assets. So what are the factors that he considers while making the uh, choice of making a portfolio. Portfolio means basket of assets. So what kind of basket of assets a wealth holder chooses to divide his wealth so that he can earn maximum return from his wealth, and why he prefers to hold money is a third topic in our outline. Like, other assets are going to provide him return. Let's say he deposited $100, or let's say 100,000 rupees in a bank account, guaranteeing the interest rate of 15% on yearly basis. But the money he is having in his wallet is going to pay zero interest rate. So why the wealth holders prefers to hold money even though they know that the money is not going to provide any rate of return? So we'll be understanding this mechanism when we are going to talk about the demand for money. Once we have understood these basics, we'll be understanding the asset market equilibrium, where we are going to talk about the interaction of the demand for monetary assets, which means assets in the form of money like bond, stock, share, and non-monetary assets, the assets that are relatively less liquid, and assets that cannot be convertible into money. So we'll be trying to understand the linkage between the money demand and money supply, uh, that will give us the asset market equilibrium. And in the last of the chapter, we'll be going to discuss the idea of money growth, a larger printing of money, and its relationship with inflation. Does higher money, does higher inflation is the outcome of more printing of money, or there are other factors that we need to consider when we say that money growth can affect the inflation in the economy? So this is the overall outline containing 5 topics in the overall chapter. So let's start with uh, the idea of money. Like, what is money? So economists have a different understanding, or they have defined the money as an asset that is widely used and accepted as a payment. So let's say you are going to buy a let's say you are going to buy some grocery items from nearby store. Now you have some dollars, but you are in Pakistan. You have some dollars, you have some bonds, and you don't have Pakistani currency in your pocket. Now because you are in territory of Pakistan, you need to have rupee for buying goods and services within the country. But you also know that dollar is also a currency, and the bond is less liquid, but it can also be exchanged for buying goods and services. But the store that you are visiting for, let's say, purchasing grocery is not accepting the dollar or the bonds or the goods and services that you are going to buy. So it means that dollar is not the money in territory of Pakistan, specifically when you are buying from a small store who is not accepting it. Why the seller is not accepting the dollar in the territory of Pakistan? Because dollar is rarely used in Pakistan as a medium of exchange matlab, in exchange for conducting transactions. That is why he's not accepting. So in order for one kind of money is the currency of the currency of the country. Another kind of currency may be the credit card that you have in the pocket. Like if you don't have money, you have the credit card, you would go to buy any product and you can use the swap the credit card and pay the bill. So that is called plastic money. And if you have debit card, you can also use it for paying money. So it means that money includes, there's no fixed definition for the money, but the generic definition or the general definition that economists provided to the money is the asset or the assets, because money includes various things. That is why we are going to use a plural in our discussion. We are saying that assets that are widely used and accepted as a payment. So things that are not widely used as a in payments are not considered as money. Now, you need to understand one thing. There are certain cases in the book where they talked about a prisoner camp in the US, where all the prisoners were using cigarettes as a medium, as a currency, right? So cigarettes were used in conducting various transactions. So if they need, let's say, a water bottle, so they would be exchanging, let's say, two cigarettes for a one water of bottle. So because in that particular camp, the cigarettes were used as a and accepted as payment, so it was considered as money. And in other various other cases, the if you go back to previous time period where the gold coins were used as a medium of exchange, so in that era the gold coins were considered as a money. But as the payment system has advanced uh, from gold to silver to precious other metals, and then to paper money, and then to check, and then to now plastic money, the cashless society. So the forms of money have changed from past to till now in various ways. So there are certain functions of money, and one of the important function is medium of exchange, and then unit of account. Third is the store of value. So medium of exchange is because in roughly in 11th century there was no money. Like there was a barter system means you need to find out the person who needs the goods that you have, and he is having the goods that you want. So you need to find out that person in order to conduct transaction, and in order to get what you want, and in order to provide what other individual want. So that system failed in such a way that it discourages the specialization, because it takes time and it is inefficient to, because it takes a lot of time and cost to find the person who is willing to uh, buy your product and who is willing to sell you the product, who is willing to buy your product that you have, and who is willing to sell you the product that you need. So it was timely, it was costly and inefficient. That is why it was failed. And in a barter system, everyone has to produce the goods that they require, which means that if I need wheat, I need to find out the person who is the producer of wheat. And let's say he needs rice and I am the producer of rice. So I need to go and travel and find out the person who needs the wheat, and I need to provide him the wheat in exchange of the quantity of rice that I'm needing. So that barter system led to coincidence of wants, right? You need to find out the person who has the same want, who has the product that you want, and who is also willing to sell out the product to you that you need. So that is why the system failed. And with the introduction of money, the payment system was facilitated a lot. Everyone was able to conduct transaction in the goods they need. So uh, it led to uh, a kind of efficiency in the system. Because if I'm let's say I'm a teacher and I'm specialized in economics, so I don't need to find out a restaurant owner who has thirst of knowledge, who is willing to get a lecture and then provide me the meal. I just need to find out the students who are willing to pay me for the lecture, and after getting the money, I'll directly go to buy the goods that I need. So it saved a lot of time, and created a kind of efficiency in such a way that people who were good at something were focusing more on their specialization. But in a barter economy, what was the problem? Everyone has to produce all the goods by themselves to meet their needs. So that is why medium of exchange is one of the essential function of money uh, that makes it effective in conducting transactions. So medium of exchange because is the idea that because money is used in conducting transaction, it 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 saves a lot of time of people, and it promotes the idea of specialization. None of the individual who earns money have to produce all the goods by himself. In this way, medium of exchange is one of the functions that money has. Right. Another function that money performs, or the money has got, is the unit of account. Because the money is used as a unit for assigning economic value to different products, and because the prices of goods and services, the wages of workers, the prices of assets, all are listed in the form of money. So money also performs the function of unit of account. What does that mean? It means that money is used as a yardstick to value different products. Let's say you are going to buy a car from Pakistan, its price will be in terms of Pakistani rupees. And if you are going to buy, let's say, cloth from a store, its price will be in Pakistani rupees. So some products will be having higher price, and that will be representing their economic value. And that is why the third essential like second essential function that money perform is the unit of account. Now medium of exchange and unit of account are connected in one way. Like, because money is used as a medium of exchange, it means that it also performs the natural task of assigning unit of value. When you are going to buy a product, you are generally going to look at its price, and its price will be in units of money. So it means that medium of exchange and unit of account are connected. But there is one difference in the two as well: medium of exchange and unit of account. Sometimes money does not serve as a good unit of account, although even though it's a medium of exchange. Now you need to think, you need to reflect on it as well. Like what I said is, sometimes money does not serve as a good unit of account, although it's a medium of exchange in your home country, let's say. And what is the scenario when this happens? When a country is experiencing a lot of inflation, like there are fluctuations in the prices of goods and services, and because there are fluctuations in the prices of goods and services, so businesses want to minimize those fluctuations by, let's say, using something that is more stable in nature. So they would be they would be using they would be valuing their products using some stable kind of currency. So they might use dollar, even though dollar is not the medium of exchange in that boundary, but because the dollar is more stable than their home country's currency, so they would prefer to use dollar as a as a unit of account rather than the rupee. So this is how unit of account function of money is, because prices of various goods are represented in units of money. Let's say you are going to buy a bag for you, its price is represented in rupees. And let's say you are going to buy a house for you, its price also will be represented in units of money. So this is a unit of account function of money. Third function of money is the store of value. Money is also used as a store of wealth, which means what? Uh, People, let's say a salaried person who has 100,000 salary, he spends half of his salary in initial, let's say in a month, and he's saving half of his salary. So that individual is doing what? He's trying to store value using money. But how good money is a how good store of value the money is depends on the inflation in the country. If the inflation is larger, let's say inflation is too high, money would not be the good store of value, even though people prefer to hold it a smaller amount of it, because money provides convenience in conducting transactions relative to, let's say, stock, bonds, and other assets. Although stock, bonds, and other assets provides rate of return, so countries where inflation is too high, people would prefer to hold their wealth in the form of other assets that are interest bearing, that are going to provide some rate of return. But because money is not going to provide any rate of return, even though people prefer to hold it, because of the easiness it provide in conducting transactions. So this is the third function of money, that money is used as a store of value. It is used to store uh, or it is used to accumulate wealth. But how good store of value the money is dependent on the inflation in the country. If prices are fluctuating, if prices in a, let's say prices in a year are going to be higher, very higher, so people would people are discouraged to hold wealth in the form of money. Rather, they would choose to prefer houses, they would choose to prefer stocks, bonds, and interest bearing bank accounts, because they are going to provide some rate of return. So we talked about this, that barter system is medium of exchange function, that barter system is inefficient. There was double coincidence of one. Money allows people to trade their labor for money. Like I provided you the example uh, of a teacher. Let's say if let's say someone is let's say good at cooking, he need to find out the restaurant who is willing to hire him, right? Because he is good at cooking, and he let's say he needs food for his family, so he needs to find out person who is willing to hire his services and then provide food against his services. So but with the introduction of money, he directly needs to work at a restaurant and earn some money that will be used to buy food items and other goods and services. That is why barter system was inefficient, but money has made the created efficiency in the system by allowing people to focus on things that they are specialized in. So money, as a result, allow people to trade with less cost and time and effort. So we have talked about it. I'm not going to repeat it. We know the unit of account. Because money is a basic unit for measuring economic value. It simplifies comparison between prices, wages, and incomes. The unit of account function is closely linked. I have already explained it. Store of value is already clear. So this is the example that I provided you in a discussion. So Redford article on the use of cigarettes as a money. Cigarette as money developed because barter was inefficient. So even non-smokers use cigarettes as money in the camp, the prisoners of war camp. So the characteristics of cigarettes as money is standardized. So like there were certain other things as well, but in that particular camp, money was the cigarettes. Now, after defining the concept of money, the next thing we need to focus on is the measurement of money. So in economics, specifically, when you talk about money, you need to understand, you need to distinguish between the monetary assets and non-monetary assets. What does that mean? Monetary assets are the assets that are in the form of money, like cash is one of the liquid asset, because while conducting transaction, if you have cash, you can easily buy various goods and services. But if you don't have cash, you have bond, you need to go to the saving center, cash that bond first, and then pay for the goods that you are willing to buy. So it means that bonds are less liquid asset relative to money. So when you are talking about division, or when you are talking about classification of various assets, even though they are the part of overall assets which are considered as money, so you need to define that thin line so that you can measure the money effectively. So if you have a car and you want to buy some other goods, and you don't have money, first you have to go and sell that car, and after getting some money, then you will be able to buy the goods and services that you want. So it means that car is not as liquid as the cash is, or car is less liquid as compared to the bond that you have, or the shares that you have. So there's a thin line between monetary and non-monetary assets. So distinguishing what is money from what isn't money is sometimes difficult, because it is difficult to discuss, like differentiate between what is considered as money and what is not considered as money. So economists have categorized two ways of uh, two ways through which the measurement of money is made possible. So the components of money are the part of the monetary aggregates. For example, the book is providing money market mutual funds, also check writing. Like you have a current account in a bank, like you have a bank account in IBA, Allied Bank has opened an account for you. You can ask your family to send money into that account, and you can use debit card to withdraw that money. So that money is counted as a liquid asset, and is the part of uh, the assets which are more liquid when it comes to defining the money. But if you, let's say, if you have bonds in your or any shares of any company, now you cannot go to the bank and withdraw that bond, or let's say cash that shares. So what you need to go to the stock market, or the company from which you bought the shares. Once you cash it, and then you will be able to buy something. So these shares, bonds, and let's say there are some saving account as well. So saving account are also the part of are also considered as a part of money. But because in a saving account, the bank asks you to put money for a fixed period of time, let's say for a year. Let's say you are willing to save 100,000, so you need to deposit it for the fixed time period. 100,000 for a period of 1 year will provide you the return of 10,000 on additional on that 100,000. But if you just withdraw before 100,000, you would be penalized. So there are various assets that are counted as money, but they are but you need to understand uh, like how narrowly the money is defined as will be the main thing when defining, or how broadly or narrowly the money is defined. It depends on this. So I was giving you the example of money market mutual funds. So these are the institutions that sell shares and that sells shares to public and raise out the money, and that money will be used to finance corporate or the government debt. So when you have money market mutual funds, you can also write checks as well to withdraw a portion of to withdraw some amount of money from the total amount of money that you used to buy that shares. So money market mutual funds are not as cash, are not considered as more like the moneyness of money market mutual fund is lesser than the cash that you have in your wallet. So you can just go to the go to any shop and buy anything you like. But with money market mutual fund, first you need to go to the bank, write a check, get it withdrawn, like like one you need to write down the check to the bank, then the cashier will give you the money, and then you will be able to buy the product. So the moneyness of cash is larger than the moneyness of money market mutual fund. So that is why, although both are considered as a part of overall money, but both are different. Are they money? Yes, they are money, but their treatment is different. So in the conclusion, what is the main idea that you need to know? There is no single best measure of money stock. Like there is a list of assets that are considered as a money. But in economics, we earlier said that monetary aggregates are used to measure the money. So there's a monetary aggregate called M1. You can see here this M1. The M1 monetary aggregate includes what? It includes the currency, domestic currency that is circulating within the country and outside the country. Another like component of M1 is the traveler's check held by the public. Now, traveler's checks are the checks that are uh, hold or that are available to the travelers who are traveling from their home country to foreign country. So they are not willing to hold cash in their wallet. They want to hold a check which they can cash in on their vacations on in any other country. So so M1 includes the currency, which is the most liquid asset, and the traveler checks held by the public. Second important component of M1, which is used to measure money and is not having any interest, is the current account that you have in the bank. Current account means an account which does not pay any interest. Someone deposits the money into your account and you can just write a check or use debit card to withdraw that money. So that is why in economics we call current account as the demand deposit. Now I'm using current account from the bank's perspective. When you go for opening an account into HBL or any other bank, that account, if that does not pay any interest, is called as current account from in the terms of money banking and finance. But here in economics we call such account as demand deposit, and demand deposits are the bank deposits, right? It are the bank accounts you can use to withdraw money by writing checks or using debit cards, and it does not pay any interest, and it is considered as the most liquid asset because you can buy anything if you have debit card. Third is other checkable accounts which may not pay any interest. Other checkable accounts may be the credit card, but you need to note one thing. On the credit card, you are going to be charged with some interest rate. You are going to be charged some interest rate. So we cannot include the credit card in this M1 category because it includes only what? It includes currency and demand deposits. And third category, we are saying other checkable deposits with the exception that there is no interest on those accounts, which means that they are similar to what we are calling here the current account that is used for making payments and receiving money from various components. So all components of M1 are used in making payments. So M1 is closest money measure to our theoretical description of money. तो हम क्या कह रहे हैं कि हमारी अब तक की जितनी भी डिस्कशन है जिसमें मेजरमेंट ऑफ मनी को हम डिस्क्राइब कर रहे हैं, तो M1 जो है वो क्लोजेस्ट मेजर है मनी का हमारी थ्योरेटिकल डिस्क्रिप्शन में. क्यों? क्योंकि इसमें क्या आता है, M1 में हम क्या शामिल कर रहे हैं, करेंसी और ट्रेवलर चेक. जो भी करेंसी भी कैश होती है और ट्रेवलर चेक भी कैश में जल्दी कन्वर्ट हो जाता है. डिमांड डिपॉजिट भी कैश, मतलब डिमांड डिपॉजिट से भी आप कैश या पैसा जो है वो एक्सचेंज कर सकते हैं, ट्रांसफर भी कर सकते हैं और मंगवा भी सकते हैं या पेमेंट्स में यूज भी कर सकते हैं. और बाकी जितने भी चेकेबल डिपॉजिट्स हैं जिन पे इंटरेस्ट नहीं है वो भी M1 का पार्ट है. कंसर्न. All right. So when we are talking about measurement of money, M1 is something that is closest measure of money, and it includes currency, currency and traveler checks, demand deposits, and other checkable deposits, with the exception of any payment of interest rate. In the measurement of money, another component or another monetary aggregate is M2, and M2 is equal to all the components of M1 plus all the assets that are less money like. What does that mean? All the assets that are not easily convertible into, are not all the assets that are not easily used in making payments are considered as assets that are less money like assets. For example, in M2 we will be taking savings deposit. So saving deposit फिक्स टर्म के लिए होते हैं और वो फिक्स पैसा आपको बैंक में रखना पड़ता है, तभी आपको जाके इंटरेस्ट मिलता है. और वो जो है वो पैसा इजीली आप विड्रॉ नहीं कर सकते, ठीक है, क्योंकि उसकी टर्म्स होती हैं. वो करंट अकाउंट की तरह नहीं होता कि आप उसको फौरन से विड्रॉ करके यूज करते रहें. सो सेविंग अकाउंट इज डिफरेंट, दैट इज वाई. और ये क्योंकि इतना इजीली पैसों में भी कन्वर्ट नहीं हो सकता, so that is why it's a part of less money like assets. So this is the first thing that we are counting in M2. M2 means monetary aggregate 2, which includes M1 and other assets that are less money like. Number 2, छोटे अरसे के लिए जो पैसा आपको फिक्स डिपॉजिट करना पड़े बैंक में. लेट्स से यहाँ पे कह रहा है कि ये एक लाख रुपए से $1,00,000 से कम पैसा जो आपको बैंक में रखें तब जाके आपको इंटरेस्ट मिलेगा, तो उसको कहते हैं स्मॉल टाइम डिपॉजिट्स. छोटी रकम के टाइम डिपॉजिट्स जिनके ऊपर फिक्स टर्म, टाइम का मतलब फिक्स टर्म होता है, उस टर्म के लिए आपको पैसा वो बैंक में छोड़ देना है, यूज नहीं कर सकते आप, ठीक है. लेकिन ये जो थर्ड कैटेगरी है, नॉन इंस्टीट्यूशनल मनी मार्केट म्यूचुअल फंड बैलेंस, अब ये ऐसी कैटेगरी है जिसमें मनी मार्केट म्यूचुअल फंड्स आते हैं. ये इंडिपेंडेंट लेट्स से कंपनीज हैं जो जिसके आप शेयर बाय करते हैं, वो आपको ये सहूलत देते हैं कि आप चेक से पैसा विड्रॉ कर सकते हैं. तो ये भी एक थर्ड जो है कंपोनेंट है विच इज अ पार्ट ऑफ M2. और मनी मार्केट डिपॉजिट अकाउंट्स, ये भी बैंक अकाउंट्स होते हैं जिन पे इंटरेस्ट थोड़ा बहुत हो रहा हो, थोड़ा बहुत मिल रहा होता है। सो ये अब ये जितने भी 4 एसेट्स हैं और इसमें बहुत सारे एसेट्स आते हैं, अब ये क्योंकि यूएस की इकोनॉमी के लिए हैं, तो हमारे पास क्या होगा, हमारे पास ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा, क्योंकि हमारे मुल्क का फाइनेंशियल सिस्टम इतना डेवलप नहीं है, तो ये दो ऊपर वाले दो तो हैं, ये सेविंग डिपॉजिट्स और स्मॉल टाइम डिपॉजिट्स तो हैं, लेकिन म्यूचुअल फंड्स में को बहुत ज़्यादा एडवांस हमारे पास नहीं है, मतलब हमारी फाइनेंशियल मार्केट इतनी डेवलप नहीं है। तो ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा क्या हो सकता है, कंपनीज के शेयर्स हो सकते हैं, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा बॉन्ड्स हो सकते हैं, तो इस तरह की चीज़ें फिर M2 में आ सकती हैं। तो ये डिपेंड करता है कि कंट्री का फाइनेंशियल सिस्टम कैसा है, उस हिसाब से आप इसमें जो लेस मनी लाइक एसेट्स हैं, जो उतनी मतलब जितना जितना M1 था जिस तरह, उतने उतना इजीली पेमेंट सिस्टम मतलब पेमेंट करने में यूज नहीं हो सकते, तो वो सारे हम M2 में काउंट कर रहे हैं। सो आर वी क्लियर? Alright. So we were talking about M1 and M2. So sum of M1 and M2 makes the money supply. The overall supply of money in the country is equal to sum of M1 plus M2, and adding M1 with M2 will give us the overall money in the country. So this is the data for US monetary aggregate, which means M1 and M2. You can see that home price increase, but मतलब ये inflation है, and this is the time. On horizontal axis we have time. So June 2009. So you can see that there are various ups and downs in the inflation rate. Now, measuring money, the M2 monetary aggregate we talked about, saving deposit, uh, saving accounts specifically. So in saving deposit, we discuss the idea of saving accounts, where the bearer of the saving account will be given some interest rate when he deposits some money for a fixed time period into the bank. Time deposits are also interest bearing account, and you need to deposit fixed amount of money that you cannot withdraw before that time, and if you withdraw there would be some penalty for that penalty that you have to pay on each withdrawal. Money market mutual funds are the organization that sells share to the individuals so that they can finance their expenditure, and they invest those funds which they raise from the public, and when they earn return over it, a share of return is given to the individual shareholders who had bought the shares of money market mutual funds. And money market deposits are also the accounts, but are offered not by the companies but by the banks, uh, and they are the competitors to money market mutual fund. Money market mutual funds are issued by organizations, and money market deposits are issued by the banks. So there's a small difference between the two. In M1, the currency that we talked about is like in M1, the currency component that we talked about is a part of M1 and is a most liquid asset. So M1 includes the currency that is circulating within the boundary of the country and outside the country. So that is why for the US economy, the countries who are trading partners of US economy also hold a lot of currency to pay for trade in international market. So that is why US currency is most stable currency in the world and is demanded by a large number of countries. So that is why a large number of dollar is available to foreigners as well. Now, in the measurement of money, we said that M1 plus M2 is equal to money supply. And you know that supply of money is the amount of money that is available in the economy, and some money supply is equal to the stock of money stock, the amount of money available in the economy. So this is a brief definition of money supply, that money supply is the amount of money available in the economy, and it is a part of, it is a combination of M1 and M2. Now you need to understand, if money supply is the amount of money available in the economy, who controls it? Like who regulates the amount of, let's say, who decides how much money will be available in the economy and how much less or more money will be available in the economy. So we know that we had a basic idea of monetary policy in our first chapter, that is the policy, government policy, but is regulated by an institution, government institution known as central bank. So we have State Bank of Pakistan as a central bank that regulates the money supply in the country, Bank of India in India, Federal Reserve in US. So in all the countries, there's a central bank which is above all the commercial and government banks, that regulates the money supply in the country. So the central bank is on the job of deciding how much money will be available in the country. So there are certain ways with which central bank can control the money supply in the country. And like first way is central bank can use the newly printed money to buy the government bonds from the public. Now what is going on? Let me show you here. So do you got the idea? Concept समझ आ गया? तो उसके बाद जो अगली डिस्कशन है वो इस पे आती है। अच्छा, थ्रू आउट द टेक्स्ट हम जो है एम नोटेशन यूज करेंगे, यूज द एम वेरिएबल टू रिप्रेजेंट मनी सप्लाई। दिस माइट बी M1 और M2 दोनों हो सकते हैं, ठीक है। तो ये अजम्पशन लगा दिए यहाँ पे। अच्छा, अब जो हमारी डिस्कशन है वो इस पे होगी, क्योंकि अभी हमें थोड़े बेसिक समझ आ गए। तो अब हमारी द नेक्स्ट डिस्कशन विल बी ऑन द पोर्टफोलियो एलोकेशन एंड डिमांड फॉर एसेट्स। Now the next central question that financial economics try to answer is, how do people allocate their wealth among various assets? And this decision is known as portfolio allocation decision. The decision of people to allocate their wealth among various assets is called portfolio allocation of asset. ठीक है, कि किस तरह से लोग डिसाइड करते हैं कि कौन सा और कितना एसेट जो है होल्ड करना है, या कितनी वेल्थ जो है अपनी किस एसेट में और कितने मिकदार में रखनी है। ये डिसीजन जो है वो पोर्टफोलियो एलोकेशन डिसीजन कहलाता है। अब पोर्टफोलियो एलोकेशन डिसीजन जो है, हर इंडिविजुअल जिसके पास वेल्थ होती है वो कर रहा होता है, और उसमें बेशुमार एसेट्स आते हैं। पोर्टफोलियो मींस the set from the available set of assets, how the what kind of asset, like what asset and how much of each asset the holder of wealth decides to hold. So all these ultimately all these assets are counted